If you're looking from the outside, if you're someone who follows CrossFit, enjoys CrossFit and all that it brings, what should be in your program? How should your program be put together? Well, there's two sides to this of what a program should have. Some of it is more what I would call the scientific side, where we're looking at principles of training and we're looking at simple principles of training. When I was doing GCSE PE, I think there was 4 principles of training. Then when I was in A-levels in university, they sort of started adding them. We're somewhere around 5 to 7 different principles of training that we should see at least 3 or 4 of them quite prevalent within a program. And these are simple things like progression. So is the program progressive? Does it take a certain movement or a certain skill? And does it address progression over time? So if you take, for example, something that we worked on about 6 months ago here at the gym is progressing people's wall balls. So we realized that when we put wall balls in a class and we're trying to create some high intensity through a wall ball, we saw that we were unable to get class attendees to create intensity with a wall ball due to a bad movement pattern in the squat when we loaded up the wall ball. Therefore, we regressed the wall ball. We put it in smaller doses through the warm-up in a number of different ways. And then we built that up over weeks. And then when we reintroduced that same number of wall balls that we'd had in the workout where we'd identified a problem, we reintroduced it into a class. 2 months later, we saw that the class attendees were able to get the right stimulus from that movement at high reps and at high speeds, at high intensity, being put into the workout. We'll do that with a number of different things. We could see toes to bar breaking down. We can see with, for example, the squat strength cycle should be progressive. It should keep going forward. So that's a big principle of training that we're always trying to develop those things. Another principle of training that we are using a lot and is in pretty much every program. Toby spoke about it actually on this podcast a few weeks ago when we talk about strength, is overload. So how are we actually creating overload within the program? And that's not just overload in one movement. It could be overload in one movement, but what's our interpretation and our application of overload within the program? Another principle of training that we always keep pretty close is specificity. So how specific are we being? How specific do we need to be? I've spoken already about CrossFit being a GPP program, General Physical Preparedness program. What element of specificity do we have in a program, and at what time and in what dosage do we have specificity in a program? So do we get very specific with wall balls for a certain time period, and then we master that as a skill or as a movement and we shelve it, and then we bring another element in? It could be a rope climb, it could be to work on pull-ups, handstand push-ups, muscle-ups, Olympic lifting. All of these different things are more specific parts of a broad CrossFit program. But how are we using, and also if you're not part of our program, then how is your gym using, how are they getting, what does specificity actually mean to them? Another element of training, principle of training that we should always be considering is recovery. So what do we encourage? What's the right application for people wanting to sort of dedicate their 1 hour a day to a gym? Should they be going 5 days a week? Should they be going 7 days a week? And how are they educated around that? Some people don't want to miss certain days. Some people like to have a rest day on a Wednesday. The application of CrossFit, which I actually have liked for a number of years and continue to really enjoy, is a 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off, which is what you'll see on CrossFit.com. Here we program the mainline class for 5 days, and then the 2 weekend classes are 2 different days. So it's a partner workout on a Saturday and more of a cardio, low skilled workout on a Sunday. Low skill, higher heart rate, more sweat, hence the name Sunday Sweat. So we're offering for 7 days, but how are the attendees? How are our clients? Or how are you guys as people who attend gyms? How are you taking care of your recovery as well? Another principle of training is what we call adaptation. So if we're doing things consistently over time, how are we seeing the adaptation of the things that we are doing over time? How is the body adapting to it? Are we getting fitter because of consistency? Are we adapting to those heavier weights? What role does adaptation play within the program? So they're sort of the main principles of training. I mean, to be honest, the real nuts and bolts of it is specificity, progression, and overload, because we're reliant. We're not just closing the gym 3 days. We're not taking one day off on the Thursday, because some people's schedules are a little bit different. But how are people taking care of their recovery? Before this all starts, though, one thing that we kind of want to really understand is people's movement and how people move. And it's quite interesting. We're almost blinded by the lights a lot in CrossFit, that we want to be able to jump up on the bars, do pull-ups, sometimes do muscle-ups, do Olympic lifting with barbells, do a lot of the fun stuff, where we are unable to do that effectively, and it's not the right order to do it in if we're unable to do the movement properly. So if we talk about progression, with a wall ball, actually our real regression would be to go back to an air squat and to see if we can master a body weight movement such as an air squat or a push-up, and how we can control our core, so how we can control that within a hollow position. Movement really is number one, and if you are unable to move your body well with zero load or with just a PVC pipe, then and create tension in those various positions, then the chances of you being able to continue to create tension and have progression within those positions with additional load is probably quite slim, and also pretty dangerous as well. So when a coach asks you to regress and to focus on movement within a program, it's not because they're just trying to make you not as good or send you backwards. It's because they're actually addressing your safety. So movement is not really classed as a principle of training, but I think it's one of the most important things within training, that you're able to move correctly, efficiently, and you're able to take control of your body in order to then progress, get specific, and start to overload it as well. So those are the things more from what I would call a scientific standpoint, that should be major call outs within your training and within the class program that you're following. So there should be questioning around that as to what is the progression? Where are we creating overload? And these are actually the kind of questions that I would love to hear people ask us here at the gym. And I would love to think that if you are training at another gym, that you're asking your coaches, like, where is this program going? What is it based on? I'll tell you, for us here, the programming block, we're actually programming on a 6-week block where there's 5 weeks and then a themed week, which in an ideal world would actually be a recovery week. But sometimes it's a little bit against that, in that some of our themed weeks are a little bit more intense than the other weeks, which are things like Hell Week, Games Week, and just trying to break up the pattern so that we create a little bit more, I guess, fun and variation within the program as well. So it's important to understand, or to try and understand, where your class program is going and what blocks it's on. And if you ask your coach that and they don't really know, then I don't know, I guess I would say that would be a problem. As I wrote about in the article that I wrote called Constantly Varied, there are some people that are programming class workouts that on Friday last week were not a CrossFit coach. They've just become a CrossFit coach and they have very limited knowledge. There's some people that went through that similar transition but have a lot of knowledge. So it's very important that you have confidence in your coach or whoever's writing the program at your gym that at least they have an approach and a theory, and hopefully they're taking into consideration some of the principles of training. If they're not taken into consideration, or they don't have, I'm not telling you to call them out, but just ask them, what principles of training are you looking at here? It could be quite an interesting conversation. When we move away from the scientific side, we move a little bit more to, I guess, what I would frame a little bit subjective objectives, or a little bit of the softer parts of a class program that sometimes are a little bit harder to measure. One of the biggest softer parts of a CrossFit program, and one of the biggest drivers for us and also for CrossFit, is actually community. So it's our objective that we bring people together as a community. We believe that training together, that having these friendships, having this connection is actually going to help people as much as the push-ups and the air squats, to be totally honest. So one of our biggest focal points is how can we bring community into our program? And I'm going to talk about it in a second of how we put together some of the workouts, but we'll always try and include at least once, if not twice a week, a partner workout or a team workout so that we sort of bring community together. We'll purposely have people working together, helping each other, sharing equipment, because one of our objectives is to actually continue to develop community. Another one is to ensure people have fun. So whilst it's not always everyone's definition of fun, some of the workouts we put together, some of them we really are trying to let people have fun, because we find when people have fun, they might be a little bit more relaxed, and then they might push a little bit more in the workout, and their results also could improve, should improve, or do improve. Probably all of the above, to be honest. When things are fun, and again, that's one of our brand values, we see the results go up. Another sort of soft outcome or measure that we have in place that sometimes we achieve, but I'll be honest, not always. Sometimes we overcomplicate things. We want things to be, another one of our brand values, quite simple. Simplicity is our brand value. We don't want workouts to be overly complicated all the time. We understand that people have very complicated lives, especially the demographic that we're programming towards, which is kind of, if you're writing a program or if you're a gym owner and listening, I thank you. However, one thing that you want to be doing is really understanding your demographic and tailoring a program that's quite specific to your audience at that particular point in time. And to be honest, this changes a lot. Our customer base here at InnerFight has changed over the years, and we're always trying to figure out what's important to the customers that are coming through the door, the clients that are coming through the door, and how we deliver that to them. But what we're finding increasingly, not only in this gym, but what I'm seeing across the board, is that people have extremely busy and complicated lives. When they go to the gym, they don't always want a really complicated workout that has 23 different movements with a load of different rep schemes that are done in a weird order one round and then in the opposite order, and then you have to take the square root and use pi squared, and like it's just way too complicated. And this is actually something I learned on my CrossFit level 1, where the flow master Pat Sherwood said, when it comes to programming, live your life in couplets and triplets and occasionally go long. That was kind of his take, which at the time I thought, well, that's quite straightforward. But the more this whole thing goes on and the more that we spend time, it actually fits in exactly right. That sometimes if there's just 2 or 3 movements within a conditioning piece, then that's when you get the best bang for your buck. So keeping things simple is one of the goals, one of the metrics as well. And a lot of the time when we're looking at a program, especially not only strength pieces, we try and put quite a bit in the strength. I'm going to go into that in a minute. We try and put quite a bit in there, but we also try and keep it quite simple, especially when you've got a group of 16 to 20 people that are all trying to do stuff together. Simplicity is something that is incredibly important. So we've got there scientific and perhaps a little bit non-scientific or harder to measure factors that I think should really be a big part of a class program.